Welcome to the Heartbreak to Happiness show with Sara Davison. If you're struggling with a breakup and you feel shocked, angry, betrayed, devastated, or sad and alone, then this podcast is for you. Best-selling author and award-winning host Sara Davison shares how you too can get on with your life to heal, grow, and move from heartbreak to happiness. Here's your host, Sara Davison.
Welcome back to the show, and today my guest is Chenier Datilus. Chenier was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey, to Haitian immigrant parents. He grew up in a large family with really strong views and very strong male role models, where talking about feelings was a foreign concept. Having been through his fair share of breakups and heartbreak, Chenier turned to writing a book called Heartbreak Gone Good, where he talks about going through horrendous heartbreak and dealing with psychological demons. So I am super excited to welcome Chenier Datilus to the show. Welcome, Chenier.
Wow. Hi, Sara. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited because it's not very often that you find a guy who's been through a heartbreak who's willing to openly talk about it on the show. So I'm very grateful that you're here. And also, I know that you've written a book. So tell us a little bit about your journey to get to writing your book.
Right. So years ago, many years ago, I was in a relationship with a young lady who I had very strong feelings for. So we dated a bit. And as we dated several months, I wanted to go the next step with her. I wanted to not only be her boyfriend, but actually end up being engaged. So that never really happened, because what happened was, as I was pursuing that, I was finding out that she wasn't really interested in that, and that there was someone else in the picture. So I was led to believe that that was something that was going to happen down the road, when in actuality she was with someone else. So that's how
that's pretty painful. Finding out that your partner's caring about somebody else is always a really tough thing to find out. So how did you find out that there was somebody else involved?
Well, I found out because I have a big family, and they were keep an eye out for me, especially my female cousins. They would kind of tell me, like, I don't know, I think I see her with someone. And I would, me being completely like blinded by love, I told them, you know what, you guys are just kind of butting into my business, but I don't see anything like that. I trust her. She's told me that, that our relationship is moving along and there's a future for us. So, but they just kept bringing things up to my attention. And so I decided to just inquire, just kind of not follow her around, but just happened to be in the same place that she was. And I saw her with another guy. And I wasn't sure what to think at first, because I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I saw other things that led me to believe that this person was a significant other.
Did you confront her after you'd seen her with somebody?
I did. I did talk to her about it. And we had let's just say we didn't have a pleasant conversation about it. I was very angry. I felt betrayed, because I thought, after being together for, I'd say, over a year period of time, that we were progressing. There was nothing I saw that was in our relationship that led me to believe that things were going astray. So that's why I was really, really hurt by what I felt was something very deceitful on her part.
I mean, finding out your partner's cheating on you is tough for anyone. I mean, I don't want to generalize, but us women, we tend to talk about things. We tend to ask, well, most of us are more prone to talk about it to pretty much everyone that comes into our lives. Maybe, the hairdresser, the friend, the parents, everyone kind of helps to support. But I know not all men, but some men do find that very difficult. And from your situation, your background, your upbringing, I know that you found that very difficult to reach out for help.
Absolutely. That, in my culture, men don't talk about feelings. Men don't reach out to speak to someone about their feelings. we just deal with it internally. So I was just dealing with the pain. I didn't talk to anyone about it. It just led me to just be more of a homebody. I mean, almost in a depressive mode, because I felt like this situation was, I didn't know. I started blaming myself at some point. So what did I do wrong? Maybe I did something that made her be turned off by my actions. Maybe I wasn't a strong enough man. But whatever I did to deal with it, it wasn't reaching out to any family members or even a therapist to get support. It was just dealing with it internally, which made it worse.
Yeah, so what sort of things were you doing then to help you cope with that?
Well, I did things that were very just self-destructive. I binged on food. I was antisocial, stopped hanging out with my friends, didn't want to go to events, wasn't even interested in like talking to other females. I just wanted to just kind of be in my own misery. So I just kind of separated myself from everyone else. So I didn't cope with it the right way. I totally went the wrong way about it and prolonged my pain.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing, because I think there are, we're not taught, are we, at school? There's not a lesson on how to cope when your relationship breaks down or when you go through some sort of traumatic event. So exactly. We kind of rely on what we've seen other role models do in the past, growing up maybe, or just who we spend our time with. And also, culturally, that will play a big part in it, like how other men in your situation have coped with things that, and were you seeing that you were repeating some patterns that maybe you saw as you were growing up as a child, maybe?
Absolutely. For me, I looked at it as, this is how men deal with these things. They don't cry. They're men. So men are supposed to just learn how to cope with our feelings. I saw it in my uncles, my father. I never saw them yearn after a woman. I never saw them feel heartbreak. So I didn't know how to deal with that. I've never seen anyone else experience that, at least not my older siblings or older generation. So it just was a hard thing for me to cope. I didn't find, even though I know there's solutions out there, I didn't want to deal with it. I just felt like I can just get through with it. If I just kind of hide long enough, maybe things will get better. And that was my approach.
I mean, it is such a common coping strategy. It's just that sort of unconscious go-to, right? I just want to hide away from the world. Yeah. I'm not supposed to show my emotion, my upset. This is just how I'm supposed to get through it. But actually, like you said, the binge eating and the isolation doesn't help. It keeps you stuck in many ways, even Absolutely. Though, sometimes it is a necessary part of the process to grieve the end of a relationship. And quite often that depression phase comes in and we get stuck in it a little bit, which is totally normal. But what was it then that shifted you to help you move through that and come out the other side?
Yeah, I started after several months of being in my own little space, in my own head, and just being isolated from the world. I started to get out a little bit more, and I did find some help with dealing with my emotions when it came to like some therapy sessions. It was something I was really adamant against, but I did go, and just so I can start talking, because I felt like it was a taboo in my culture. We don't talk about it. You don't do therapy. I didn't even tell my parents about it. I didn't tell anyone about it because I felt like, well, this is a sign of weakness for me to admit that I need a therapist to help me deal with my emotions. But I started doing that, and I found someone that was able to talk to me and help me, guide me, and let me know that that's part of the process. I mean, that can happen, but it is not the end of things. You can recover and get stronger from there. So that was what I did. And I just started slowly getting myself back into normal society, like they would say, and hanging out with friends, and just trying to get out of my funk. It took a while, but I was able to slowly do that. But it was through therapy and just constant reinforcement by friends and family, just letting me know that, hey, you can't be like this. This is not healthy.
Yeah. It's really interesting. You talk about your culture. You've brought up a couple of times. For those people listening, can you explain a little bit about your culture?
Right. I'm Haitian American. I was born in America, in New Jersey, but my parents are from Haiti. So in our culture, it's a very men-dominated culture, meaning the men are head of the household. The men make all the decisions. Men don't show feelings. The men's don't show weakness. Men don't have, they don't, they don't show, they don't allow their heartbreaks to be shown. And if they go through it, you don't know about it. I mean, my dad was always strong, firm, the head of the house. He took care of everything. And he wasn't one that would say, hey, son, how are you feeling today? Let me talk to you about it. Did you have a bad time? Did you it looks like you had a relationship issue. You want to talk about it? I couldn't do that. So I come from a culture where it's very macho. Men are looked at as we're strong at always, and if we don't take care of home, then we're not worthy. So given that background, it was hard to grow up being someone that was more of a romantic, someone who cared about feelings, someone who felt pain easily. So that was a challenging part of growing up, being Haitian American.
Oh, I mean, it's interesting that you talk about that with your culture, because I have male clients from all over the world who experience very similar things. There's some sort of intrinsic belief there that, you know, the macho got to be strong. It's a weakness to show emotion or upset.
Absolutely.
And I think that's can be very damaging, because you keep a lot of emotions in. And, you know, I know you talk about in your book, there's a theme of sort of overcoming those sort of psychological demons. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by that, because that's a really interesting term. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there struggling with similar things right now.
Yeah, so for me, the psychological demons just entail just your state of mind, like how you handle this, in this situation of heartbreak. So for me, it was looking at myself and just seeing nothing but bad. Looking at myself as a failure, looking at myself as someone who was not worthy. And so and when I know that it's like you're doing something self-destructive and you know it's not good for you, but you can't stop doing it because this is what you feel is your comfort zone now. This is where you go to. So for me, those demons just happen to be like, I'm in a bad state, I'm in a bad place, but I'd rather be in this place right now, because the pain of having to allow people to see me in this state would be worse. So just doing self-destructive thing, like I mentioned before, from overeating, watching too much TV, just not doing what I'm supposed to, not going to work, not being late to work constantly, and a little bit of alcohol. I'm not a big drinker, but some of that. But it just behaviors that led to problems down the road, whether it was with my employer or having relationship issues with my other family members because I wasn't interacting with them, ignoring their calls, not being in the world, just disappearing.
Yeah. I mean, it is really interesting because your breakup will have a ripple effect on your entire life. You know, unfortunately, it's not just capsulated to, you and your ex. It is everything, whether it's work, as you say, or, parenting or friendships, other family members. So, I mean, it really is something that, it's why it's so traumatic to go through, because it has so many repercussions.
It does.
I'm really interested in how, you obviously you said you came out of that by asking for help with therapy. Given your culture and the people around you, how did they regard that? Was that something as, obviously you were nervous about asking for help in the first place. When you actually did, what was the reaction?
Yes, it's surprising. There's two sets. The females in my family were much more understanding and said, that's good, because a lot of you guys you're too strong for your own good. The males, on the other hand, cousins and brothers, were surprised. They said, well, therapy, why do you need that? We don't need therapy. And so I got a mixed reaction. The women were very encouraging. Not the elderlies were different because they grew up in a culture in a time that they didn't do therapy, but the younger people of my age, my family members, have done it before, and especially the females. And they've been in relationships that had problems, and they've encouraged their mates who didn't want to, because their mates also happened to be Haitian. So they were very supportive, where the male cousins were skeptical. My brothers were skeptical. I didn't even tell my parents. I didn't tell them because I don't know if they could understand. My dad would not understand it, nor would he support that. So I talked to both sides, and I got support on the female side with my sisters and cousins, but the guys were skeptical and weren't sure that that's the route I should have. They just said, you should just hang out and let's go hang out and and find people to date, and that will get you out of it. And I told him that's just not how I function. I don't just get out of things, you know.
That's a really interesting thing, because that is advice that a lot of people going through breakups are given, aren't they? I mean, there's that old saying, the best way to get over someone is to get under somebody else. I mean, not very pleasant saying, but that is out there. And I think, it is obviously a quick fix in the moment, but it's not going to change some of the fundamental issues. And again, it can cause more heartbreak and pain down the road. It's one of those sort of distractions rather than dealing with the actual cause, which, I think you're very brave to step up and do that. Having seen how successful the therapy was for you, did you find that some of the attitudes of your male family members and friends, did that change over time?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, because they saw the changes, they saw that I was getting better, but I feel like they stole some wall with them when it came to that, because they did ask me and inquire, like, well, what do you guys talk about in therapy? How did you sort through that? Because you were really in a shell. And so I don't know if it encouraged them to go and do it themselves. I did find that they were more interested in hearing about it than they were before, because they started to see the change in my attitude and the change in my behavior. Then they noticed that was a positive thing. So they're more curious as to how I got there and what I did, what was the process. So I told them, you would have to go in therapy yourself to get it, but I think it's a good thing to do. And we have to get this stigma out that, therapy is for weak people, it's for weak men, don't do therapy. So in my culture, that's something that's prevalent. And I just wanted them to know, like, if we got to do better, this generation has to do better than the previous generation. We got to start being open with our feelings, because that's how we can deal with it. We won't be able to deal with it by keeping it in.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping you have inspired a generation there to do better than the previous generation. And I think, that obviously you were in a lot of pain and you found a way out, and sharing that with other people is great. I'm wondering how you found it when you had your first therapy session, to sit down with someone. And then, it's one thing to book the session, but it's another thing then to start opening up when you've kept it all so hidden and closed down. How did that work for you?
It was really awkward at first, because I'm sitting at this chair and then someone's asking me, a stranger no less, how did that make you feel? And then asking me some of my pain points growing up as a child. And it was awkward. I had a hard time initially opening up, because I wasn't used to talking about my feelings. Plus, I was a little reluctant to go back into my childhood years. And not that they were terrible, but it's just that I just remember not being able to express myself. And so when she was asking me to go back and start talking about these things, it was a pressure point for me. But over time, as I started to understand the motive and the process behind the questions and how she was trying to get me to, I realized this is the way I have to come out, because I haven't talked about these things, not on the level I needed to, in order for me to get out of my situation. So it was awkward, but it was a build up to just me opening up slowly. But as we went through different sessions, I felt more comfortable talking about my issues and my concerns about my feelings.
Have you learned from that then, now that it's, what have you taken away from it? Do you find you open up more easily to people now, or do you still sometimes go back to holding those feelings in?
I feel like I'm better in that respect, because there are a lot of things that I would not do. I would not tell people how I felt about certain things. I wouldn't, through high school and so forth, college. I just could not. And I knew that it was not good, because I would see something I really don't like about something or someone, and I just could not do it. But after these sessions, I felt good to say, hey, by the way, when you said that to me earlier, it really stung. I appreciate if you didn't do that again. And that was, even me hearing myself say that was weird. I said, I can't believe I just told someone that. All my years, I never told anyone how I felt. Even they would say something, I would just ignore it, act like I didn't hear it. But now I'm talking. So I'm not saying that I'm full, like, hey, every chance I get, I tell people my feelings, but I'm much further along than I was when I started the therapy sessions.
Oh, that's amazing. Well done you, because it's one thing to ask for help, but it's another thing to take it on board and then to make that part of who you are moving forward. So I think that's a really inspiring story for a lot of my listeners, because to go, from such an entrenched cultural background of keeping everything secret and being strong at all times, to actually being confident and strong enough to be vulnerable at times and say, look, that hurt me, is a huge step forward. And hopefully you are inspiring, and with your story you're inspiring others as we speak now. And I know also that you found a lot of peace from writing your book. So tell us a little bit about the book, what it's about, and how it's helped you.
Right. You're right. I did find some peace because it touched on a subject that I went through in my earlier years, as far as going through a heartbreak, and then all the, I would say, collapse afterwards, the psychological demons, the issues that stem from that. So after what happened in my relationship, I started writing this book because I wanted to chronicle what I went through and the pain in the process. And I felt the best way to do that is to writing and putting pen to paper. It was kind of like a journey that I went through, and there was some similarities in the story. And then I decided that I was born to do that, which was interesting because, again, I come from a past where I didn't open up about my feelings. And this book that's all it's about. It's letting out feelings. It's letting be known that, hey, this is, I love and I hurt if you hurt me. So that was the process for me. And it was cathartic because I find in writing this book that I started to heal a little bit more as far as understanding like what I went through and why I went through it and how I responded, not in a positive way. But I learned that sometimes you do. In love, you just never know what's going to happen to you. You never know when someone breaks your heart, how are you going to respond? Some people can handle it well, some people don't. And in the book, the character didn't handle it well, but I wanted to make it that way because it was important to not make him strong, but make him not that he was weak in the fact that happened, but he was weaker and became stronger because of what he went through.
Wow, I love that. I mean, I love that sort of trauma to triumph and how adversity can create a real strength within you. So your book's called Heartbreak Gone Good. And it's about a man who overcomes a really horrendous heartbreak and is dealing with those psychological demons that we touched on earlier, in order to help him find a new love. Is that so? Tell us a little bit about, don't give anything away because we want to go buy it and read it, but tell us a little bit about how that starts and what we can expect from it.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's just a little bit about the character. He comes from a strong family, loving family. And so he has a real close relationship with his mom, so close that he's like a mama's boy. But as he grows older, his relationship starts to disintegrate. It's just that his parents die, and then his siblings, who he was close to, is not as close to. So he yearns to have his own family, and that's the goal of that. And so he meets someone in a law firm environment, and he is smitten right away. She's everything he thinks he needs. She's smart, she's powerful, she's beautiful, she's energetic, and she commands. And he is just, then that's where it starts. And from that on, from meeting her, it's like when they say love at first sight, he goes from there, and then things go supercharged from there. And that's how the story starts. But he just, because he's so smitten and he's so into her, he doesn't see any of the pitfalls. And so that's the whole point. But the key thing about the story for me is just that it's not so much that, is what happens afterwards. How do you deal with that? Because we're going to fall, but how do we get up from that?
I love those stories, those sort of the stories, that take that real heartbreak and then they turn it around. A bit like the podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness. I think that's a journey that, sharing those stories and finding different things, because everyone responds differently to different things, and everyone's up against different challenges in their breakup. So actually, I mean, this is going to be fascinating. So thank you so much. So tell me a little bit about where we can find you. If people listening want to buy your book, where can they get it? And also, are you on social media? Can we find you somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find it on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon, you can find my book there. I'm on Instagram under Chenier Datilus. And then it's in different places too. I've seen it Barnes and Nobles, Target, but Amazon is, since almost everyone uses Amazon, it's the easiest way to find it. And you can get a copy. It's a quick read. It's a fun read. It's my passion. I put everything into it. And I feel like this story represents a lot, not just what I went through, but a lot of what a lot of people went through. And it's okay for men to admit that they've been badly broken, but you have to find a way to get through that and then live again. And that's what this story is about.
I think that's lovely. And I think that message that, whoever you are, male or female, and even if you're from an environment or you're somebody that doesn't like to express their emotions, then, there is a way through and you can come out stronger, as you clearly are. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And I have one last question for you that I ask all my guests on my podcast. Obviously, the podcast is called Heartbreak to Happiness. And I think it's really important that you recognize what happiness is for you. So when you are going through those challenges with those psychological demons, you can tap into, oh yeah, I know this is a little bit of pocket of happiness along the way. So what is happiness for you, Chenier?
Happiness for me, I always tell people, I'm going to start with something really corny, but this is what my happiness is. From a relationship standpoint, obviously being with someone who's compassionate, loving, supportive, and that wants to go on a journey with you. So, but my daily happiness is a cup of coffee. It sounds corny, but I like a nice cup of like a latte. But happiness for me really is just about being with it's not necessarily, you can be with someone that you love and that's there. But if you don't have someone, accepting yourself, loving yourself, and being happy with the blessings that you've been given in life and living from there. So whether you're with someone or not, you can be happy. I mean, if you're with someone, you can be happy by just being you. So that's my version of being happy is just being me.
I love that. And I know you've gone on and you're married now, so you did get that happiness at the end of all those challenges, which is lovely
Absolutely.
to hear. Well, thank you so much. You've been really inspiring. I think you've opened our eyes to a lot of challenges that happen out there when you're going through breakups. And so thank you so much for being a fabulous guest.
Thank you, Sara. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode. Be sure to check out Heartbreak Gone Good on Amazon and follow Chenier Datilus on Instagram as well. And I look forward to you joining me on our next episode.
That's it for today's episode of Heartbreak to Happiness. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to win a free ticket to one of Sara's virtual retreats. The retreats are a transformative combination of live webinars with Sara herself, coupled with empowering online video programs designed to help you cope better with your breakup and start feeling happy again. For more details, head on over to heartbreakttohappinesspodcast.com, where you can also get a copy of Sara's free gift. Thank you, and join us again on the next episode for another dose of Heartbreak to Happiness.